Yeah.
Well, good morning, Hugh. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Albert. Every day's a good day that they let me in the office.
I like that. Well, first of all, you're going into the office.
Yep. Going in mostly like 4 days a week. Not that that's what everybody's doing, but
Sure.
I like coming in.
Well, it's first of all, thank you for joining. It's all about the agents. Again, it's crazy to believe. It's crazy to think that we had a conversation January of 2021. And the day looked very different back then. The environment was very different. So it's great to kind of fast forward and having you on, and you're just so you know, you're kicking off the 2023 season for It's All About the Agents. And I do like to mention that your video was one of the most watched videos that I've had on the segment. So I need to have you
just for the
every
bloopers.
time. What's that?
It was just for the bloopers.
Just for the bloopers. Just for the bloopers. But you've really added a lot of insight into the insurance industry as a whole. But also for MMA, Marsh McClennan, you've been a leader in that agency, and as a national broker that I had the pleasure to work with, you guys done a phenomenal job.
Thank you. And thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So for those that might have not seen our segment in the past, Hugh Leslie is a principal of MMA, and he is a principal in the life science and tech segments of the agency. And one of the things I want to mention too is, we talked 2 years ago, we touched on the program, the segment, right, of life science and tech, and how important that segment is for San Diego, Orange County, right? SoCal, which is, kind of a big hub for that. And you mentioned that early on in your career, some of your mentors mentioned hunt what's around you, right? Hunt what's in your area, which you've obviously done a great job. You talked about, having a major and two minors. And I feel like now you've graduated into your doctorate, within the segment. But speak a little bit about, just program specific, the importance of why agencies should have kind of that major, right? That program, and touch a little bit also on the success of the program, because when we talked in 2021, there were so many things going on, so many agencies maybe struggling with hospitality and other divisions. But MMA West and the work that you guys were just doing phenomenal. And as we see today, you guys have kept your foot on the pedal and it hasn't stopped. So not that you have to share the secret of success, but share a little bit about what you guys are doing that's different today.
Well, a lot of things are different, and it's crazy. We spoke 2 years ago on this, but so if I look back 2 years ago, what we were doing different to now is, I think probably when you and I started, Zoom was somewhat still trying to figure out what's going on and how do we work together and what are we missing. And I think the really big, the bottom line of any of the success that we've had is constant communication with the team, and figuring out how do we backfill those fortuitous conversations in the elevator, the hallway. Or for me, my biggest thing, I still haven't figured out the answer, is, our young producers would literally sit in my office or my peer's office on a folding table. Mm-hmm. And anybody was welcome to come in throughout the day and just sit there. So sometimes we'd have nobody, sometimes you'd have 4 new producers, not only just kids out of school, but people that were second or third career coming in and sitting and absorbing. And then we would have this kind of little debrief that took just several minutes to say, okay, well, what do you think? What are the questions? Okay, how do you take that onto the next conversation? So I'm still trying to figure that out. We're doing that on Zoom. We're debriefing after Zoom, but it's a little different than having 3 or 4 people in a classroom environment. Sure. Sitting in and it actually started out when I was in a cubicle. We would have 1 to 2 other people in the cube listening, trying to overhear. Right. And go from there. So that spirit, we're trying to figure out how to keep doing that, and we will. But I'd say that's been a hurdle. To answer your question on how we kept the gas on and full speed is
Mhm.
a blend of making sure that we're delivering for current clients, but always out there in the community and figuring out how we engage on a personal level so that it can be an authentic relationship that is not based on insurance at all.
Okay.
I think that's the key, right? When I first started, I have a mentor that said, don't say the I word. Never go to lunch and say the I word, right? So it's really about learning about that client, figuring out, we hosted an event on Thursday in San Diego. We had 68 CFOs and general counsels of life science companies that came to hear an amazing entrepreneur speak on basically life sciences from the 1980s on. And so there's nothing about insurance there. It was about the tacos and then hearing a great entrepreneur story and then the ecosystem getting to know each other. So there's a couple points to why it is important to focus. One is because the typical controller and CFO and general counsel and CEO who are our clients, they're going to recycle within the industry. It's not common within life science or tech that you're either tech or life science. And then once you're in, you're in. You rarely leave that discipline. So getting to know that stable of professionals is extremely important. And I think that probably goes across multiple industries, is that once you get a seasoned professional, they're going to transfer from a food and beverage company to food and beverage to food and beverage as an example, right? So it's really finding that out. And then the technical insurance piece is absolutely paramount. We've created multiple insurance forms in the last 3 years that didn't exist before that have been adopted by the carriers. Well, the only reason we were able to do that is because we're getting hit by claims every week that are just specific to this industry. And so being able to know the coverage inside and out is absolutely important. And I joke about not saying the I word. I go back to the event that we did last week. I had 4 different clients pull me aside and ask an insurance question to say, hey, I know I haven't gotten back to you on this or that, where are we on this claim? Or so being able to quickly visualize the forms in your head and visualize coverage in your head is paramount. And I'm not sharp enough to do that across multiple industries. And then I also think just having a pulse on the micro market where things are going to be different per market. We hear across the board, oh, property's bad, oh, auto's going up, or this, but we don't see that to the same levels. We see other things. We see, historically public D&O being massively high for life science companies, but now that's at a 50% cut reduction. And other industries aren't going to see that because it's these micro markets, micro carriers, and a huge specialty within it. And CNA is a great example where we can work very, very closely with the underwriters on a text message basis, get them on a call with a client, and then have the added expertise and depth. And I feel like if I was doing that across multiple industries, just from a bandwidth and memory perspective, I wouldn't be able to do it.
No, I think there's a lot to be said, right, about being a specialist, and then not only that, but as you say, being involved in the community as it's extremely important because they see you as that insurance advisor, right? Even though, but they see you as the guy that's at the events, constantly participating, giving back. You're recently, you're so involved with San Diego Business Journal, right? And you're out there, and I think that just says a lot, not only to you as an insurance professional, but just in general, right? You had made a comment in our last conversation about, clients becoming friends and your friends becoming clients, right? And I think that resonates, right, with the consistency. And I will say, one thing I have to give you credit is that you come off as very authentic. And I think, right, you would probably say that as an insurance professional, that's probably one of the most important things, right?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think it absolutely is. The people who are the best producers, I think, are the ones that are very authentic in their interest in their clients, and they're also have a natural curiosity. So I was on a deal once, and a brilliant service person that we work with, the client says, well, how do you gauge who you work with? And he says, oh, we work with anybody that's interesting. And I thought, my gosh, isn't that wonderful that we have the ability to work on these puzzles all day, every day, and we have the freedom to choose what we want to do and work on what's interesting. Obviously, it needs to bring revenue,
Sure.
but we have the flexibility to do that. Any producer has the freedom in their day to figure out what they're going to bring in and find something. So that's another thing I would recommend anybody to do is when they look at their majors and minors, which we talked about last time, find something that's interesting to you.
Right.
I've had mentees that say, gosh, I wish I was more interested in tech or more interested in life science. I'm just not. I'm more interested in X, Y, and Z. And that's actually created new practice groups here. Being able to have the flexibility and going back to how we're full speed ahead, I think it's really diversity of the overall book at MMA West. I mean, if we go back 15 years ago, 20 years ago,
Right.
we had the beginning of a life science team, tech
Right.
team, 5-7 people. I've been here 10 years next week, and we had 11 people when I joined. We're at 50 people now on just life science and tech. But because of that and that momentum, and then the collaboration within the different practice groups, we've been able to support different mentors and different teams.
Sure.
But we now have a food and beverage practice group. I think it's probably 12 people. That was 0 people a couple of years ago, right? So, and it's multi-million-dollar books of revenue that supported, which creates jobs and creates career growth and all of that. And I think that's really been the big thing is, a big part of my day is thinking about, okay, how do we make this one of the best places to work for team members? And to do that, we need growth because they have to be able to grow and they have to progress in their career. And without new revenue, you're stagnant. And so you're going to lose people.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up a great point too, because I remember, we talked about 2020 and right, how challenging, that was for, people in our age group, right? And it's how do we transition? And, you guys were in a position where, you had, hired some young talent and some of that young talent that you guys brought in, really were the ones bringing in the new revenue, right? That was something that, and now fast forward, right? That person has probably now gotten their bachelor's degree, right? 2 years in, right? They've got some good wins, so they're feeling really good. But in a recent article that I read with at the Insurance Journal, they talked about the challenges with employee retention and employee acquisition, right? They talked about like in 2020, and I lived it too. I had, an underwriter retire, and we saw so many people in the industry, right? There was this, the Great Resignation, right? There were so many people because, in insurance, we do have an aging workforce that we're, looking to get out there. They're like, I don't want to deal with the Zoom. I only got a year left. Like, we saw that, but, you guys were well positioned, for that because you were bringing on young talent. And, so many agents struggle with that, bringing on young talent, but retaining that talent. Right.
Yeah.
And, how have you guys done it? And how, for national, and I would say, specific to national brokers too, because this is not only a challenge for independent agents, but also for national brokers. How have you guys positioned yourself for that? Like what is the formula that you're utilizing for that?
So, well, one is okay, so I have a couple of things. I'll talk about how we're finding people, how we're retaining people, how we're doing things. But a comment on the Great Resignation. I think something we're doing within the life science team is perhaps different than other ways people look at it. So years ago, and I think it was probably in the Wall Street Journal, I had read an article where there's this guy at Goldman Sachs, and he was known for helping so many people in his career. And he caught a lot of flack internally for years because he was helping people find jobs at other banks and he was helping find at other areas. And his core tenet was, I'm here. These are my team members. These are my lifelong team members, not much of my team. And so it's much more of an idea of like, we're all in college together.
Right.
And we just happen to have a class together on this team, and then who knows where it goes. So
Mhm.
for the recruitment or the retention piece, I feel like a lot of people got into, and not to say that this didn't happen at all on our team or broader teams, but I feel like people got into it where it was like, okay, let's have this bidding war to maintain talent and get people to stay here,
Yeah.
versus just having an honest conversation and saying, you're going to be making $40,000 more to go
Yeah.
somewhere else. I hear you, and I
Right.
hear that.
Right.
That sounds sweet. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk through, just as friends,
Mhm.
why do you like it here? What do you want to get? What are some questions you can use at interviewing with the other firm to
Mhm.
come back with? And some people, we said, hey, you should do it. Go do that. Other
Mhm.
people, we said, we walked through it and they said, gosh, I think the long-term potential might be a little bit better here. So,
Okay.
which is interesting now because, I feel like the bidding wars are settled down a little bit as
Yeah.
firms are. And now we have my mind, a more sustainable model, because we didn't blow out
Mhm.
our pay bands, and we didn't
Payments.
blow out, and we didn't say to somebody, hey, you're more special than somebody else who's been here, and
Mhm.
we're going to pay you an exorbitant amount of money and have a negative blowback on somebody else. So I think that's one piece of it. But how are we finding people? So um, we are going out. So Grossmont College here
Where's my
has a
college?
program.
Yeah.
I mean, we're working with junior colleges, and I want to say we have hired people that have a high school degree, and that's it, full stop.
Okay.
Some of my best team members have a high school degree, and they've gotten their everything else on the job here, right?
Yeah.
So in our mind, it's saying, and this is not necessarily indicative of across the firm, but
Sure.
in the West, we've gotten creative to say, let's make sure we're trying to find the right personality fit, and then let's make
Mhm.
sure we're giving them an abundance of training, be it on the service side or the sales side, and look at it. And we have new hires that came from very, very diverse backgrounds and went to high school. And we
Mhm.
have people that have their master's degrees starting at the exact same time and working hand in hand, right? So I think
Excellent.
anybody in insurance can agree that what we learned in school at any level probably doesn't have a lot of applicability other than working as a team and having follow
Right.
through, right? So
Right.
we're trying to figure out. Now I have a call this week with somebody that is um, one of the number one NCAA players in women's sports. And I have somebody that's at a junior college. So we're trying to figure out and get the right excitement in.
Yeah.
And then the training and support, where no matter the size of the company, we'll entertain a conversation with that person so they can learn and they can hunt and they can grow and get the quantity in so they get to quality of prospecting.
And that's a really good point because I specialize in small business, and that's been my journey, my insurance journey pretty much my entire career, right? Is I've been a small business advocate. I live it, I breathe it. And so many companies today, where small business wasn't maybe a focus, before, it is an absolute focus today, because we know that a small business company could be anywhere from 30 million in revenue, right?
Yeah.
Companies like ours, that's how we entertain it, and we look
Yeah.
at small business in that sense. So it's really, I always say small business is big business.
That's huge.
But
Yeah.
the fact that you're encouraging, right, these young producers to have these conversations, right? Because and especially in your division, small tech company could easily blow up tomorrow and become one of the largest companies in the country, right? Because you see that innovation.
Yeah.
But entertaining those conversations has been, I would say, probably really beneficial for you guys.
Massively. And it's not just, I mean, it's not just the life science and tech. I mean, for us, I mean, that's specific, but when I first started here, there was a client, and I remember, they are a distributor of a product. And
Mhm.
I remember leadership saying, I don't know if they're the right fit. It's only a couple $1,000 revenue to the company. And I was fortunate that one of the executive leaders here went out when I took over the account.
Right.
And we walked out of that and they said, by God, this is what Barney and Barney was built on. People like this and companies like this. And we can't forget how we got to where we got.
Right.
And I look at that and say, well, that is the foundation. That's the cornerstone
Mhm.
of our entire firm. And that's what gets us through the economic cycles, is having this diversity in of book and of book size, including, the small commercial stuff. It's the bread and butter for the firm.
And that's a great point, because I think, not shying away, not walking away, right, from companies like that really sets you apart, right? Because you could have easily said, okay, well, this is not, it's not going to bring enough revenue for me, right?
Right.
And not focus on that client. And those are the clients that you help, that you foster, and relationships that probably they'll stay with you for 20, 30 years. They'll still
Yeah.
be your client, right?
And Albert, I think one of the feedback I hear from other offices and other brokers is they say, well, I don't understand how you do it. I don't understand how you work on anything under 5,000 revenue, 10,000 revenue
Sure.
as a firm, because how do you make it profitable?
Sure.
And what we've done is we have 10 people that just work on that desk. And this is just for the life science business, and tech business. But what we've learned is we can use it as a phenomenal training ground, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's really the crash course, and we can recycle the money from a lot larger deal and reinvest it. But that's what leads to it. We did in 2021, we did 48 IPOs onto the NASDAQ.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Of that, all of them started in small business. We did not win a single deal that was at the size of going public. All of them started at typically with a CNA $600 annual bump.
Right. Right. And that's what, I've been preaching this for years. I'm like, don't shy away from small business. But it's all about how you build it. You guys have built in a phenomenal team. I've worked with them for over 5 years, but known them for over 20, right? Being in San Diego, everybody, right?
Right.
And that has been something that's always been kind of, secret to your success. It's good people. They work fast, right? But they get it done, and they're knowledgeable, very technical. Because I think you do spend a lot of time, on the technical side. Do you find that, because I think a lot of times, acquiring new talent, right? And you're saying right out of high school, or, the Grossman College has that insurance program, which is phenomenal, right? And other colleges. Do you find that the investment, because I think a lot of times agencies might shy away because they don't have, the mentors or the sales programs. I remember when I started as a producer, I was sent to producer school.
Right.
I was sent to, we had Anthony Cole sales training, where you would do the whole, mock, interviews with the client and everything like that. And it was a really good program. I felt that how I was brought up.
Right.
But that's obviously very costly. And I don't see necessarily a lot of agencies doing it in that fashion. So have you found other ways to do that, to kind of provide that same type of training?
So the best training I have seen is just on the job shadowing. And I used to say, people would say, well, what do you like? What's your internship program? Like, what is it? How do you do this? And it said, well, you're just a shadow. That's it.
Yeah.
There is no plan. There is no syllabus. Now, MMA's done a really nice job of implementing so that, there's some structure and consistency, and
yes,
and it's been phenomenal from that way. But I think for any brokerage and any agency, if there's somebody on your team that's willing to be a coach and engage with the new team member, and that's again why coming in the office has been important to me and continues to be important, right? Is so that you can have that natural shadowing and that natural learning process. I've actually found the formalized programs are tough. Many producers are experiential learners, and they're people person. They're not an academic loving to read textbooks, right? Which is why it makes them good at eating sandwiches with people. But I think that experiential learning is where they learn and they hear, and then they can structure, well, what's the difference between all of these coverages that we talk about?
Well, and I love that, because I remember going out and with my senior brokers, right? We were, I came in as what they called an associate producer. So we were tied into a mentor, and we would go out on accounts, and, they would be there to support us. And, I worked with some classics, in the San Diego insurance community, and just, I always liked to pick certain elements of each producer that I liked, right?
Yeah.
And I liked, even the hard ones that really challenged you, they just wanted you to be better, right?
That's right.
And
You borrow some ingredients from everybody and make your own.
exactly. And then I kind of created my own, my own recipe, right, of who I wanted to become as a producer.
Yeah.
And everybody is so different. But I think you're right. Some of these programs sometimes, it can't be a cookie cutter, for everybody, right? Which becomes a challenge. And that's a really good advice, because I think, as we talk, whether it's national brokers or independent agents, right? There are people in those agencies that want to help others, right? There are people that are probably in their senior level that would benefit from bringing on somebody new, right? To like you say, shadow them, go out on an account together.
Yeah.
It probably even gives that senior producer some fresh energy,
That's
right?
right. Exactly.
But that's a great, and I'm glad you share that, because I think a lot of people that are going to listen into this, this interview is gonna say, okay, well, you know what, I know somebody in my office that can do that, or you know what, I can actually, do that. But the fact also that you've mentioned junior colleges, right, having a high school degree, this is an industry that you can do extremely well at any level of your education, right? Or at, having a second or third career path, right? At any level, and we have a point of entry for you.
And it's okay to go from the carrier side to the broker side to the carrier side to the wholesale side to whatever. And I think that's the other thing, is there's a discipline for whatever your natural talents are. There's a discipline and a job for you.
Yes.
That could all be the actuarial work and all of that piece, but the industry is so broad. There's literally something for everybody.
I know my son's 15, and we recently moved to Houston, right? So we're out here, and I looked, 2025, what are the careers, right? And I'm doing the research, and boom, there you see risk management, right? Data analytics, right? And I'm, oh my God, you can merge these two, right?
Yeah.
We can build something. He's like, Dad, really? I'm like, hey, listen, I just want to show you the potential and the possibilities, right?
That's right.
Because it is an opportunity that a lot of people don't look at. And one thing that you mentioned too, a secret to the success has been bringing on diversity. And you mentioned 2 years ago bringing on one of your first female producers, and how she's been killing it, and I'm sure she's continuing to kill it. But that is a really good point, right? Because you want to be able to bring as much diversity as you can.
Yeah, we just validated another female producer who's 29. So that's 2.5 years. Yeah, so it's good. We got to keep the steam.
Keep that up. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to segue to is, we talked about, kind of your journey, right? And the journey of just in general, the industry, right? But pre-COVID, were you on LinkedIn as much as you are now?
No, not at all. Not at all. And it was suggested that I should get linked on by one of our interns who's now one of the young women who validated. And nice. I said, nobody wants to see me like I'm selling into my guys my dad's age. They don't want to see me on. And so I just started experimenting with it, and I posted some things about insurance, which absolutely flopped. I think they had 5 views and a -5 likes. And then I posted from the kitchen floor of my girls and I on that first week that we were all at home, and I had 200 likes, something, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is something that's possible. And then I just started trying to think, and I had an opportunity to present through Zoom and speak to a college class, and then thought, okay, well, how can I can't, I'm not going to see people for lunch. So how do I express what we're doing with our day and contributing? Sure. So, I just snapped this really stupid picture with me, like with a whiteboard behind, and then that got some traction. I thought, gosh, people are interested in knowing what you're doing.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'm not going to do anything about insurance. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to do what I'm doing in the community, and start thinking about it as Instagram for the executive.
Sure.
And Albert, I know you've done a good job, and we've talked before about kind of the blend between professional posts and personal posts.
Right.
And I know that's a good idea that people post about their kids every day. But when there's something cool to share, like a Halloween, a unique tradition of Halloween, and an amazing set of costumes that you guys did with your kids, or bring your kid to work day, how we're involving it. And what I think it's done is really makes it so we're real people. And again, going back to that authenticity, where it gives us something to express, hey, this is what we're doing. We're not just insurance nerds, which might be the case, but it gives us more flavor of a real personality, and be able to connect with the folks that we're working with.
Do you see that continuing? Did you see that trend kind of eventually morphing into, just kind of how we communicate with our clients?
I do. I think it's absolutely the case. I know other brokers, even outside of our firm, that are good friends that we talk, and they're doing it and getting more engagement. And I think it's just a good way to get in front of people where, if we go back, 20, 30 years, maybe you'd send a marketing mail or a flyer.
Oh, yeah.
But by connecting with somebody, even after a first meeting, where you're kind of developing this rapport that they don't really, you don't even realize that they're seeing. But I've had multiple clients that have gone elsewhere. We haven't connected for a bit, and then they say, oh my gosh, I saw this, we should catch up. So it's just a really good drip marketing campaign. Just to say, hey, I'm still here. Here's what we're doing. And that's kind of it. But yeah, I would recommend that everybody try to post at least quarterly something to show what they're doing in the community or with their team, or but not trends on property market. Nobody wants to see
right. Nobody wants to see what's going on in terms of the insurance day to day, right?
We want positivity. You can open the newspaper and get enough.
Oh yeah, right. You can turn on the TV and get as much negative as you want. And I think that human side, right? Like we talked about, bringing your kids to the office day, right? That was a great picture of you and your girls. And I think it just shows, right, that human side, that we're all, and we're all in the same struggles, right? Like, that time of lockdown, everybody was going through it together. And now transitioning to, we talked about, employee retention. We talked about changes there, success of the practice. But you also mentioned something about going into the office and spending a few more days in the office. Have you seen, is it kind of a 50-50? Do you see that continuing within our industry as far as, going back into the office, or just this hybrid model?
I think the hybrid model is here to stay.
Okay.
We have hired multiple people that are not in San Diego. We have a great team member in Houston, also from Canada.
Oh, okay. I'll have to take him to lunch.
Yes, you will. And we just hired another great team member in Sacramento. Okay. So what we're trying to do is get people in quarterly for fun events that we're doing, and that could be, serving at the food pantry as a team, something like that. But we're investing the cost of the airplane ticket and the hotel room for the night, and maybe a client meeting, something like that. But Albert, I think the answer is something that you and I aren't even seeing yet. It's going to be, the innovation is going to come of how do we build these great teams? And there's a way to do it. I mean, you and I haven't seen each other in person, but we can still catch up this way, right? Have a great
absolutely
interaction. But the hybrid piece, for me, coming in and spending a little bit of time with everybody is important. And that doesn't mean every week even, I don't think. Right. But for our team, if we can get in once a month for a day, and my bigger thing is people at our stage of the career, we've got ice that we're skating on, right now
Yes. Yeah.
from over a decade or 20 years of experience that we can
Right.
say, oh, I'll call XYZ because I know him. I sat next to him.
Right.
Where the new people, that's really what I'm trying to get is a phone a friend button of
Yeah.
how do we get them comfortable with that? And during our interview process, I always say this, I say, look, there's people who haven't worked. And the only people that I know that haven't worked are afraid to raise a flag and say, I don't know, and
Yeah.
reach out. So if we can foster that through Zoom, through instant message, through text message, and then augment it with real time that we're breaking bread
Yes.
at wherever,
Right.
then I think we can build on that and really have a great relationship.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that's a good message for everybody, right? Because I think agencies and even companies, right, they're all trying to figure out,
Yeah.
what is going to be, the next wave. I was sitting down and watching on the news the other day, and some companies are obligating you to come back,
Yeah.
right? And saying, hey, you better come back. And if you don't, then we might lower your salary or whatever it might be, right?
Well, I think in 2 years, and when I get invited back in 2 years, we can reflect again and think, okay,
Yes.
and here'll be the challenge that you and I look at is, are the new business numbers for producers different for the folks that came in and sat in a bullpen versus sat at home? And I don't know the answer yet,
Right.
but maybe that's a marker.
Well, yeah, the numbers will say the
Yeah.
numbers will
Yeah.
talk, right? And as far as the time frame, right? Because you used the code word validate, right? Is every producer wants to be validated.
Yeah.
When you're coming in, and this is for just general information for new people that are coming into the industry. What are you looking for somebody coming in, right? And what's the time frame that you look at as far as validating?
I'm looking for Albert, this is funny, but it's true. I'm looking for somebody that walks fast,
Okay.
physically walks fast,
Okay. I like
because
that.
they're impatient and they're
Yes,
going to be enough unreasonable to be a good producer.
I like that.
Um,
That's unique. Okay.
Yeah. Anybody that walks slow, and I will
Uh-huh.
say this is my own bias, is not going to be a great producer.
Okay. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they're too slow.
Uh-huh.
Because there has to be an impatience with the day, an impatience to move to the next thing and solve the next problem, right?
Right.
But I'd say looking for beyond fast walkers is people who are curious and
Mhm.
interested and wanting to learn, and also not wanting to punch a clock, but willing to work extremely hard, a lot of long hours, including time on the weekends.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions around like, well, how do the producers here put up the numbers? Well,
Yeah.
because we're always on.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
That-
Yes. It never stops. Right.
Yeah.
It never stops.
So
Right.
not to say that we don't have time off and you don't want, you don't want to spend time always on your phone, but I'd say people who are willing to grind and work hard, but also enjoy that.
Right. Right. You have to like it. You have to like what you're doing at the
You
end
have to
of the day.
enjoy the game.
You have to enjoy the game.
And if you don't, then it's not the right fit.
And in terms of validation, when we're looking at a young producer, right?
Yeah.
Are they, whether they're coming in with, let's say, a certain salary, and then, they're obviously building a commission level, validation, usually you're wanting them to be 100% commission based, revenue based, right? What's the time frame that you guys are seeing right now with some of the young folks you're bringing in?
I think 18 to 24 months, 18 being really fast.
Okay.
And part of that 18, which is tricky, is because the run-in revenue, right? Because you might close a deal and then
Correct.
it doesn't hit. So
No
I'd say it's
problem, yeah.
closer to 24 months. And I also think that 18 is more of a formalized number to say, like, but it gives the flexibility if somebody's not working out to have some hard conversations. Is this the right
Okay.
fit?
Okay.
But I'll tell you, I think you asked what the secret sauce is, and I think one of the secret sauces is patience and support. We have multiple people who have been emerging producers for longer than 18 to 24 months,
Sure.
but their personality is additive to the team. They're not a time suck for the service team, and they're showing great promise and have the right culture and mindset.
Right.
And so I would say for any firm or any agency looking at it, don't have that firm number, because everybody's going to learn at a different process.
Right.
And also you have to remember your coaching might be the problem. It might not be the mentee.
You have to take a look into and within yourself too.
Yeah, and your teaching style might be a little bit longer for somebody, right? So I'd just say be patient and make sure that you're having a lot of open and real dialogue to see how people are feeling, so that you're just not stringing people along or being strung along.
Nice. Well, this is great advice, and I think when folks listen to this, I recently joined an association out here, insurance association in Houston, because I have to network. It doesn't matter where I'm at. I got to build a network, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be working with some local high schools and kind of putting together some insurance programs.
Amazing.
Just a couple classes here and there, but
that's great.
But we really want to get them to a point where they can graduate. When they graduate, they can kind of jump into as an account manager.
Amazing.
Position, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we can, and I think we will achieve it absolutely we will. I think it's been a really good point of entry for a lot of folks to get into the industry.
Yeah. And Albert, I think one of the points to hit on is, in the industry and a lot of the Fortune 500 firms have wonderful DE&I initiatives.
Yes.
But a hurdle in anything is having an initiative and then actually delivering on scale. And I think it's going to be the creativity, like you're talking about right now, going into and being very, very, very intentional about
where you're going,
right? And then that's going to allow you to fish in the right pools, to mentor the right people, to grow that. So I think that's amazing that you guys are doing that and so intentional.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun. I'm really excited about it. So. I had to find my pocket here in Houston. I wasn't gonna just stay in the office. I gotta get out there.
Well, Albert, let us know if you find any fast walkers at those high schools.
You know what? I will definitely let you know for sure. I love that because it is true. You have to be able to pivot day to day.
Yeah.
Right? And you're waiting for the next challenge. So I really do. That's some really good advice. I'll remember that. I'll look for the fast walkers.
I stole it from our CEO.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good enough. Listen, one thing I wanted to say, Hugh, is every time we have a conversation, whether it's through the interview process or just having this type of formal interview, I always learn from you and appreciate the time, right? And MMA has done a great job. You guys are a phenomenal firm. You continue to be innovative. You continue to be, you're continuing to grow. When we talk about life science and tech, right? What's the next step?
Yeah. So one of the things on the mentees, right? Having these kids come up and they say, oh gosh, there's a lot of market share here. What else do I do that's interesting? And because of that, now we have a digital health team that's spun out, right? And so as we probably all have experienced with kids with earaches or something during COVID, you're doing digital health now. So I think that area is fascinating. And then also for us locally, it's really trying to figure out how do we expand our footprint. And how do we learn about different markets that are out there that would be interesting, where we might, potentially be able to add value to the life science ecosystems. Example, I grew up from Columbus, Ohio. I'm fortunate to have some childhood friends there that now are in the life science community. And you kind of see the makings of this new ecosystem. And it's not totally new, but they've got the university there with Ohio State. They have Children's Hospital that's one of the best in the country, and they're doing now what a lot of the universities and hospitals are doing out of Boston, out of San Francisco, out of San Diego. So you kind of see these exciting new areas where there's a lot of potential growth.
So definitely a lot more expansion, the practice kind of growing in other areas and other offices as well.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely on the radar to do that. And I think, Albert, the question there, the hurdle for everybody is, we talked a lot about these authentic relationships and spending time in the community. So how does one do that if it's not where you live?
Right.
So I think there's some creative ideas to do that. I don't have the answer, but
find the fast walker in those areas.
Right. That's exactly right.
Well, listen, I'll always keep an eye out there for young talent for you, Hugh. So if I engage with a few other people as I travel along, I'll definitely let you know. But again, for MMA and where they're going, where they're headed, what they've done, I think it's just phenomenal to see, a national broker really just bring on young talent. I love to see that. I love to see the energy, right? That you guys are doing. And I've had the pleasure to know you guys since the Barney days and see that transition. So, again, it's phenomenal to see that. Every time I enjoy our conversations, and I really do appreciate the time, Hugh, that you spent. And listen, we won't wait 2 years, but I think we'll definitely have another conversation, because there's a few other things that I want to touch base with you on too. But it will be great to see the transition and what you say. What's the difference between those producers that are in-house and out of office, right? Just to kind of see the production numbers there. And I'm sure there'll be some good numbers to share on both sides.
Well, thank you, Albert. Good to see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Hugh. Take care.
Yeah.